Lines today.
Yeah, so here we go. John Calipari is apparently the new head coach at Arkansas, as the Hogs have called him from Kentucky.
Wes Moore works at the Buzz Radio in Arkansas, also works for the Fox station up there. I contacted him about an hour ago. He does a radio show until 4, had another hit at 4:30, then he does television. Probably will be with us tomorrow. He was the first one to have this story and multiple sources. And I got to tell you, and I know Wes, been on a show, I thought that maybe that was another, well, they're excited about this at Arkansas, like Louisville thought they had Scott Drew or somebody else, but Wes hits it out of the park. I have not seen anything that's completely official on this yet, but when Bob Holt and others in Arkansas start to report it, you can call it money. Now, what does all this mean? John Fanta, who, of course, is a part of the field of 58. Calipari said he's
68.
Field of 68, said he had bad feelings about his situation at Kentucky. The lack of support had grown to the point where he didn't feel like he could stay on because he didn't feel wanted. The assets that Arkansas, Tyson Foods brings to the table, put in place, convinced him to make this move, and apparently not only a lot of money for Calipari, but also a tremendous commitment to NIL too.
That's not surprising. What is surprising is that he let it get to this point, because Jeff Goodman tweeted out something similar last night in that, Arkansas is prepared to give him everything he needs. And I'm like, well, Kentucky wasn't giving him everything he needs. It seemed to let Calipari, and I know Jeff Goodman wasn't doing this, but by saying that Kentucky wasn't supporting him enough, lets him off the hook for him not being what they were paying him for at Kentucky, which I've seen Andy Staples say this. I've seen Reddit College Football say this. I've seen a lot of people say this. This is either a great move by Arkansas or this is Arkansas's Jimbo Fisher move, where, they go and get this big name who's got these accomplishments, but he's not really as wanted where he was as maybe he was just a couple years prior to that, and things have changed. So he's a fantastic basketball coach. He's a legendary. He's going to be a Hall of Fame basketball coach for sure. But at the end of the day, he's not really been that great for the last few years.
Yeah, I think Arkansas swung a big stick and got themselves a Hall of Fame coach, and can't blame them for trying. So if it fails like A&M and Jimbo Fisher, then that's just the price of doing business and the price of trying to get to the mountaintop and get your program to where you want it to be and where you feel that it should be. But, yeah, it was shocking to see that headline, as much as things just don't seem to really have any unofficial or official rules in college sports these days. This was still one of those where no matter how many shocking things we tend to see now, whether it's the transfer portal or whatever else, this was still something that just seemingly came kind of out of nowhere and blew people away, myself included. So, yeah, it's a huge hire for Arkansas. A huge amount of investment and huge, risk in it in a way, but not really, because what is your alternative? I mean, you lost Eric Musselman. What are you going to go do? You're going to go just hire some dude that kind of gets people excited? So you got the fan base fired up because you went and stole Kentucky's coach. You went and stole the coach from the top program in the country. But, yeah, there are definitely Jimbo Fisher vibes with this. And for Calipari, from his standpoint, okay, I get run out in a year from now, or I go get a brand new deal and I start back from square one, and I don't even have any pressure whatsoever outside of just the natural pressure of being John Calipari and expected to win, because Arkansas is not going to fire me after 1 year. But if I flail again at Kentucky, I'm out of there. So he was good either way. He's going to collect his money either way, and he's already made more money than God at this point in his career. But it was definitely getting a little bit heated there in Lexington. Given the expectations and given the lack of reaching those expectations coming on a few years now. So great timing for him to move on, stay within the conference and stay familiar with everything. He'll be able to take advantage of the transfer portal and have a big backing behind him, as you mentioned there, with the NIL money. So, yeah, leaves a huge job, but you can see why it makes sense to go to Arkansas right now.
So once the thing, what happens here? You already started seeing speculation that if Musselman goes to USC, Calipari, Kentucky, to Arkansas, what's next? Here is Jeff Goodman, fieldof68.com, his 6 names. Scott Drew, Bruce Pearl, Nate Oates, who just had the great run to the Final Four, Billy Donovan, Sean Miller, Ole Miss's Chris Beard, who's been at Tech and also, of course, was at Texas and for a cup of coffee at UNLV, Those are some names. Who else on the list? There's a couple of gambling sites that are putting these names at the top. Nate Oates. There's Drew, Pearl, Donovan, same names. Dan Hurley, who's playing for the national title tonight. We'll get to that. Otzelberger at Iowa State. Rick Pitino. Jay Wright, who's retired. Mark Pope at BYU, and also the field of everybody else underneath of those names.
Well, Mark Pope is a Kentucky grad. He was on the 96 championship team under Rick Pitino, so he would make some sense there. Billy Donovan was an assistant on that 96 team before he got the Florida job. Or assistant at Kentucky, maybe at the 96 team before he got the Florida job. And he's always kind of been the Kentucky dream, for coming back. But is he going to leave the Bulls to go to Kentucky? That would be, and to go do college basketball again after he hasn't done it in a while, and it's changed drastically since he got there. He's going to be on any list until they find out no, because Kentucky's one of those jobs that could, they did it with Calipari. No, he was at Memphis. Memphis did it with Calipari. But, teams have gone into the NBA and gotten guys out of it in the past, although it's a lot different now. TJ Otzelberger is an interesting one to me because here's an up-and-coming coach. He would be on that second tier to me of, say Kentucky hits the same wall that a lot of big programs have, whether it be football or basketball, where they're like, okay, we want Scott Drew, we want Billy Donovan, and we want Nate Oates, and all those people I'm kind of good where I'm at, and I'm successful where I'm at right now, and the money's about the same. So there's a lot of, I don't really want to dive into that pool. Well, if you go to TJ Otzelberger, he's kind of in the up and coming there at Iowa State. So a guy like that makes a little sense to me. Same like Mark Pope, although he is again an alumni or an alumnus of the university. Look, Dan Hurley leaving UConn to go to Connecticut. I don't know, other than long-term conference stability. I don't know why you'd do that.
Yeah, Dan Hurley wouldn't make much sense given he's possibly going to win his second national title in a row tonight. Unless you're just bored in stores.
He's favored to, yeah.
Yeah, you're sitting there looking at probably a second title, and why pick up and leave for an Arkansas job that's not better than the UConn job, no matter what league you're in. But it is a good job, and that's why it's got a really impressive list of targets. And I'm saying Arkansas, but the Kentucky job's right there with the UConn job. I got that mixed up, but it's the Kentucky job. So when Alabama opened up, there's going to be all the biggest names possible. Obviously with Alabama, you can start to nick one off one by one of Kirby Smart's obviously not going to take this job, and Steve Sarkisian's not going to take this job. But I think for Kentucky, with the exception of guys like that, like a Dan Hurley, where you go he doesn't really need to take that one. They're pretty much wide open to get, you would think, whoever they want to.
I haven't seen Shaka Smart's name on here, who I think that they would love to see Kentucky go back to playing that style of basketball. And I don't know. Marquette's a great basketball school.
I don't know. Maybe they're scared off by what he did at Texas, which was not anything close to what he was able to do at Marquette. I don't know. But, they're going to have their pick of the litter for the most part. And obviously we'll get into Scott Drew a bit more. I saw him on another list where he was – 1-to-1 odds, the very top choice. And I know some of this is just trying to get people to pony up their cash and bet on it. But here he is getting mentioned for another job after just getting talked about earlier this offseason with another big job. So with Louisville. So, back to state of Kentucky rumors here for folks in this area. But, it's an extremely attractive job, high pressure, but it's the kind of gig like coaching the Lakers or the Cowboys or whatever that's going to be appealing to a lot of people.
No question. So those are the names of the various coaches, and there's maybe two or three that aren't listed that could be in the middle of that. Now, one of the things, Ashley Hodge, who's a huge Baylor basketball, not only fan, he's a Baylor alum, but also travels quite a bit with them. He'll join us at 3:30 to give us his insight. He wrote something in the premium section. If you're not a member, you can be. It's a great section of a lot of inside information. He will join us on what he wrote and what he said at around 3:30. Now,